I was juggling back and forth whether I was going to talk about this in my Friday live stream or do it as a separate video. And I think I made the ultimate right decision to do it as a separate video, mainly because it's a lot to talk about with this particular topic. And if I did it in my Friday live stream, I would have to rush through it. I wouldn't be able to talk about it at length like I wanted to, and I probably would end up leaving some parts out. So I said, let me go ahead and just turn it into a pre-recorded video. So some of you may or may not have heard about what happened with the actress Melissa Barrera. Now, in case y'all don't know who she is, she came to prominence for being, I guess you can say, the new face of the Scream franchise. I actually first got introduced to her when she did Scream, well, I guess you can call it Scream 5, back in 2021 or 2022, excuse me, when she did Scream 5 back in 2022. And I wasn't familiar with who she was. You know, I was worried if she would be able to help carry this franchise going forward, especially since the Scream franchise has been around for so many years and it was being carried by Neve Campbell, who plays Sidney Prescott. The Scream franchise has been one of my favorite franchises, even back dating when I was a child. That was one of the first horror movies that I watched even as a kid, and I loved it ever since. And of course, it's pretty much become a cult classic, both here and abroad. Like, you see that Ghostface mask, you already know what time it is. But the reason why we're talking about Melissa Barrera is because she made some posts on her social media accounts where she's talking about what's going on overseas. And the post apparently rubbed some people over at Spyglass, which is the company that puts out, or who's behind the Scream films, had put out a message saying that Melissa Barrera has been fired from Scream 7. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, okay, this must be pretty intense that they fired their main star. Now, if you're not familiar, she is helping to carry this franchise into, you know, with a new audience. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, wow, this must be pretty intense if they fired their main star, their lead, the one who's supposed to be, in a way, quote unquote, taking the place or the mantle from the Sidney Prescott character, especially since Neve Campbell was not present in Scream 6. But we're going to get to that because I have a part where I'm going to bring Neve Campbell into the fold. So she got fired. Like, they just announced she got fired because of the post that she made on social media, because apparently they were deemed as quote unquote anti-Semitic. But when you look at some of the posts that she made, a lot of people were saying, well, one, they were not anti-Semitic, and two, you just proved her point. So now people are saying, oh, we're about to boycott Scream 7, and I was really looking forward to how it was. I'm gonna be honest with you, Scream 6 actually was pretty good, by the way. And with the way that it ended, I would not be, it actually had the perfect ending. Honestly, if they wanted to stop the franchise right there and not make another Scream film, which I'm sure some people will be proud of, but then some of the people who are fans want to see it keeping going because they want to see the arc complete, because it's technically in the middle, then that would, you know, it is what it is. But to just straight up fire her, and she didn't say anything wrong, but you have some that took offense to it, then that's where a problem or an issue lie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this article coming from The Cut. Ironically, it's called The Cut. And it's interesting because she literally got cut from this franchise, and Ghostface uses a knife. And I believe it's a subsidiary of New York. And it says, Melissa Barrera has been removed from Scream 7. Actor Melissa Barrera has been removed from the next installment of the Scream franchise after sharing a series of Instagram stories expressing support for Palestine. Barrera, who played a lead role as the daughter of the original serial killer in the two most recent reboots, has consistently posted about the Israel-Hamas war since early October. In her comments, she's referred to Israel's occupation of the Palestinian land as genocide and ethnic cleansing. Another post called Israel a quote-unquote colonized country. Per Variety, she also wrote, Western media only shows the Israeli side. Why do they do that? I will let you deduce for yourself. A statement some have interpreted as hinting at an anti-Semitic trope about them folks controlling the media. And it's crazy because it's like, by them firing her, they literally just proved her point. And it's funny because I did the live stream about what's his name, Michael Rappaport, and him saying he's going to create this list, or he's tired of the stereotype about them running the media and owning the media and this, that, and the third. Look at what just happened right here. The thing is, she wasn't far off base with what she said, and people now are clapping back at the whole situation and saying things along the lines of, so basically what you're saying is you support people who engage in genocide. My best thing for them would have been to do was to pull her to the side and say, look, we appreciate your enthusiasm about what's going on and your ability to put stuff out there and use your voice, but kind of dial it back a little bit until this thing the dust settles a little bit, because it is what it is. It's basically what they're trying to say, or what they would have what they should have probably done. And then I had read somewhere else that they said that the director of this movie, I believe, said it was out of their hands. Like they pretty much got blindsided about the whole thing just as much as Melissa did getting fired. So it's like they went over him and just straight up fired her. Like they put it out there and straight up fired her. I don't know if they called her or text her or whatever the case may be, or they just put it out on social media. Hell, she could have found out she got fired the same time we did. It goes on to say, Barrera also reposted a segment of a Jewish Currents piece entitled "A Textbook Case of Genocide," which referred to violence against Palestinians as a distortion of the Holocaust to boost the Israeli arms industry. At the same time, Barrera has explicitly expressed sympathy and support for Jewish people, writing in one story, just like all Palestinians are not Hamas, all Jewish people are not the Israeli government. Another stated you can condemn the Israeli government and the US for aiding them and still want safety and peace for freedom for them around the world. On Tuesday, Variety reported that Spyglass Media Group, the production company behind the last two Scream movies, had removed her from the upcoming Scream 7. The company has confirmed to several outlets that Barrera was dropped from the next installment and said in a statement, "We have zero tolerance for anti-Semitism or the incitement of hate in any form, including false references to genocide, ethnic cleansing, Holocaust distortion, or anything that flagrantly crosses the line into hate speech." Now, what people really was upset about with that statement was they were saying where people would, when they said false references to genocide, and people was like, false references to genocide, then people was like, then what the heck do you think is actually going on over there? Like, really, like, what do you think is actually happening over there if it's not that? Again, the more that they spoke, the more they shot themselves in the foot. And I'm talking about the Spyglass Media Group. This thing even transcended so much further that people were so upset that she got fired that people started to boycott that Thanksgiving movie that just came out that I did a review on, because Spyglass Media Group is the one that was behind the production of that movie. Christopher Landon, who was set to direct Scream 7, briefly addressed the news in a tweet that he deleted soon after, writing, "Everything sucks. Stop yelling. This was not my decision to make." Shortly after Barrera was removed, Deadline reported that her co-star Jenna Ortega had also exited the Scream franchise, apparently for reasons unrelated to Barrera's departure. And I'm going to talk about that in a separate article. Barrera removal comes amid major fallout in Hollywood surrounding the Israel-Palestine crisis, most of it involving public figures accused of anti-Semitism for criticizing Israeli violence against Palestine. Talent agent Mahad Dakil, whose clients include Tom Cruise and Madonna, was nearly fired for promoting posts that used the word genocide. Meanwhile, United Talent Agency dropped Susan Sarandon after she made controversial remarks at a pro-Palestine rally. Barrera has not commented publicly on the news, but has continued to post Instagram stories criticizing Israel and calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Contacted for comment, Spyglass directed the cut to his previously released statement. And that is that entire article right there. So that's a very interesting take. Now, like I said, that one was focusing more so on Melissa Barrera. Now, the next article that I'm going to read is going to focus on Jenna Ortega and her deciding to leave the film. Of course, if y'all are not familiar with Jenna Ortega, she's pretty much a rising star. She's very young. I think she's like 20 or 21. And I first got exposed to her also in the Scream film that came out last year. But then most notably, what she's known for now is that Wednesday series that's on Netflix. And I have to tell you, that was a very good show. If you are a fan of the Addams Family, I'm sure that you're going to like that series as its own spinoff in her story. And they also got renewed for a second season, which I'm very glad for and looking forward to as well. And it's interesting that I mentioned Wednesday because that kind of segues into the story with Jenna Ortega and why she decided to leave, or so she says. So this article that I'm reading from is going to be coming from Deadline. It says Jenna Ortega is not returning to Scream 7 due to Wednesday shooting schedule. Now, I'm going to say this. I call BS on her leaving Scream 7 due to a scheduling conflict for Wednesday, because what's the irony or the coincidence that Jenna Ortega says she's leaving the film of Scream 7 the day after Melissa Barrera gets fired from the same film? If she was going to have scheduling conflicts, that would have probably been made aware months ago, because to my knowledge, it took them about 8 months to film Scream 7, and I believe they were in Romania. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, which is almost an entire year. Meanwhile, when they filmed Scream 6, they were in Canada, and I don't think the shooting schedule was nearly as long as it was for Wednesday, because Wednesday, of course, is a series that had 8 episodes. Jenna Ortega is the lead, so she was in every single episode, so it was very high demand. And they were overseas, and they filmed for 8 months because it's an episodic thing. You're talking about roughly a month per episode. So I highly doubt the reason that she gave as to why she's leaving this project was because of a scheduling conflict, because they probably would have been able to find a way to shoot around that schedule. Because after all, they had to shoot around that schedule when they were doing Scream 6, because Wednesday came out in November of last year and Scream 6 came out in March. So she was filming probably both around the same time, or she did Scream 7 or Scream 6 first and then did Wednesday. I don't know how her scheduling is, but as far as I'm concerned, that the reason she gave or her team gave as to why she's leaving Scream 7, I don't buy it being a scheduling conflict. But with that being said, let me go ahead and get into the article. Jenna Ortega, who was a linchpin draw in getting Scream 6 to the horror franchise's best opening grosses ever at $44.4 million stateside, $67 million global, isn't expected to return for Scream 7, we hear from sources. This has nothing to do with the fallout from Melissa Barrera's firing yesterday by Spyglass Media over the actress's social media repostings on the Hamas-Israel conflict, nor does it have to do with the actress asking for an end to her Scream contract, or so they say. Again, I raise an eyebrow to that. Ortega and Barrera play sisters in 2022 Scream and this year's Scream 6, respectively, as Tara and Sam Carpenter. And it says, we understand that Ortega's exit from the next Scream was discussed before the actors' strike. A script for Scream 7 is not yet ready, and the primetime Emmy nominee has to head to Ireland in April to shoot the second season of Netflix's Wednesday, which will go into the summer. Additionally, Beetlejuice post-SAG-AFTRA strike had a few extra days of shooting in order to meet its Labor Day 2024 theatrical release, which I also found out she's going to be in the sequel to that. I don't know who she's playing, but she's supposed to be in that too. Now, I find it interesting, they mentioned in the article now that it was in talks that she wanted to end her Scream contract before the strike happened, which was back in May. But if that was the case, that would have made news, especially since Scream 6 was only in theaters for about a month before the strikes started to, a month or two before the strike started to kick in, which was in May 1st. And Scream 6, I believe, came out March 10th. And they never reported anything about her wanting to get out of the contract until now. And ironically, she says she's leaving Scream 7 the day after her co-star gets fired from that same movie. So again, I don't know how true that is, but to me, it doesn't ring as completely honest, and this is just something that they're putting out there. But what is the coincidence that the timelines line up and add up the way that they do? To me, it just seems like it's not completely true of why she left. I mean, it's, if you wanted to say that, you know, you left because on behalf of your co-star, it is what it is. Or maybe she probably doesn't want to say that because then it's going to probably look at her some type of way. Because to my knowledge, I believe that Jenna Ortega posts certain type of things on her Instagram stories, much like Melissa Barrera did. And you also got to understand too, both of these women are of Mexican descent. I think it's pretty obvious by those last names. No news yet on Scream 7's schedule. However, one thing is clear for Ortega post the success of Wednesday and her star blasting off. The world is her oyster when it comes to future roles. Ortega received the Comedy Series Actress Primetime Nominee Emmy nomination and a Golden Globe Comedy TV Actress nom for her turn as the title character of Wednesday. The Scream franchise, with a seventh sequel, as they call it, stands to hit the $1 billion global mark at the box office. Through 6 films, it stands at $911 million. Yesterday, in response to Barrera being dropped from Scream 7, Spyglass issued the statement, "Spyglass stance is unequivocally clear. We have zero tolerance for anti-Semitic." I'm not going to read the rest of that because we already read that. And then the rest of it is pretty much rehashed from a previous article. Now that I've covered that part with Jenna Ortega, now I'm going to talk about how Neve Campbell comes into the fold. So we pretty much all are familiar with who Neve Campbell is. She most notably plays Sidney Prescott, and since the beginning of the franchise, you know, they call her like one of the ultimate final girls. And she played in all Scream films except Scream 6. Now, the controversy around her not returning for Scream 6 was a money one. They basically said that Neve Campbell wanted more money. The studio wasn't trying to give her more money, even though she's been carrying this franchise on her back since she was in her early 20s, like since 1996. She's been a huge staple, of course, into the franchise. Whenever you see Neve Campbell, you automatically think Sidney Prescott. That's just, it is what it is. That's where her career path has pretty much been at inconsistently for all these years. But when she wanted, you know, to have some more funds, they wasn't about to budge and give her any money. So she said, okay, well, I'm not going to be a part of your 6th film. And she sat it out. Now in the movie, she was mentioned. Her name was mentioned by the Gale Weathers character played by Courtney Cox. And that's the only mention of her that they do. They also mention Patrick Dempsey's character, who got introduced in Scream 3, who we now find out that him and the Sidney character are married with children. So yeah, now what they're trying to do is, because now that Melissa Barrera is fired, Jenna Ortega has walked, now they're going to try to bring Neve Campbell back in, as well as the Patrick Dempsey character that he played in Scream 3, and try to reboot or rewrite this script that they already had. Because mind you, they haven't started filming anything yet. They were still very much in pre-production. They haven't filmed anything yet. The script may not have been all the way complete, or maybe it was, I'm not sure. But now they have to rework this whole thing. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, how is that even going to work? Because you were going in another direction away from the Sidney Prescott character, unless you were going to find a way to bring her in to end her character arc altogether, which I would have been completely fine with, because there's really nothing left for Sidney Prescott to do. But now you're about to rework this whole thing because you fired your main star and your other main star walked in the middle of their arc for something that was taken and blown completely out of proportion. But I'm gonna go ahead now and read this article coming from Variety. Not even Ghostface could see this twist coming. The Scream franchise lost 2 stars this week, putting the 7th film in the series in a creative conundrum, according to sources familiar with the project. Variety broke the news that Melissa Barrera was fired by Spyglass, the film's producer, in recent days over social media messages that it deemed to be anti-Semitic, specifically posts regarding the Israel-Hamas war. That decision was made after the company was notified that Jenna Ortega, whose star has risen considerably since she joined the beloved Wes Craven horror series, would not return due to a scheduling conflict with the 2nd season of her smash Netflix hit Wednesday. Barrera and Ortega play sisters in the film. Backlash to Barrera's ouster has been intense, with the film's director Christopher Landon reacting to the events surrounding her exit. He posted and deleted a statement on X on Tuesday. It seemed to some fans like the planned sequel was collapsing in real time. However, even before Barrera was fired, plans for the next Scream were being retooled. Ortega's exit had required the creative team to make some alterations according to the individuals with knowledge, but there was still hope that the actress might be convinced to come back for some sort of cameo. That no longer seems to be in the cards. Another source familiar with the franchise disputed this, saying Ortega was never in the mix for the new film. James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick, the writers of the previous 2 Scream installments, will now work on a fresh draft to present to filmmakers. Some set pieces and twists may be preserved, but the movie will need to find a new protagonist. And it's crazy because it's like this was supposed to be like the wrap up of the entire series, to my knowledge. Like this was supposed to be the end. So now in the middle of their arc, you got to find 2 new protagonists, because it doesn't sound like they're recasting them. They're just finding 2 new people to throw in there. I don't think this is going to make a whole lot of sense. I'm just seeing the writing on the wall right now, and it's in chicken scratch. Ortega and Barrera signed on for 2 Scream movies and fulfilled those obligations with installments 5 and 6, another source noted. They would have needed new deals for the 7th chapter. So who will have to do battle with the masked killer? The Scream movies have a bench of characters who are still alive or who could be reanimated. It's a horror movie after all, and the joy of Scream is that it does not bury these dead too deep. These include Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox, of course, because they can't use David Arquette's character of Dewey because, spoiler alert, he was killed in Scream, the 2022 movie. Campbell appeared in 2022 Scream but opted not to return for Scream 6 over a salary dispute. Producers are keen to see her reclaim her iconic character Sidney Prescott. Another possibility could be Patrick Dempsey, who had a scene-stealing turn in 2000 Scream 3. None of these actors have been in active negotiations thus far, and a lot of people are saying after what they did with Melissa Barrera, do not sign on with them. Like the fans are demanding that they don't. And speaking of Spyglass, they had no comment. This is the hope had been for Scream 7 to hit theaters in 2025. Although the producers are essentially starting from scratch, that release date still seems feasible if Landon and the writers can find another scary story to tell. Scream films don't require extensive visual effects and can be produced quickly because it's a grounded slasher horror flick, like I said when it came to Thanksgiving. And most horror flicks are pretty low budget anyway, unless they require a lot of special visual effects. And that's the end of that article right there. And that pretty much is like the conclusion of all the articles that were attached to this. Like I said, it's a lot of moving parts to this. I don't know how many people are going to like really receive this particular video because it's not something I would traditionally talk about, but I just wanted to talk about it again because I actually happen to be a fan of the Scream franchise. I do believe that Melissa Barrera definitely did get railroaded. I know Jenna Ortega is saying that she left the franchise or she's leaving because of scheduling conflicts, but like I said, it's just the irony and the coincidence of the timing of this. It's just very kind of sketchy to me, but it is what it is. If she left because of a scheduling conflict, hey, it is what it is. But one thing that really sticks out to me with this whole thing is that if a person like Melissa Barrera, who is an actress, can get fired from her main role, a leading part in a massive franchise like this, where she was starting to carry this, like people were starting to warm up to her character, especially after she got so much hate for playing this role because no one could see her in that type of role except for Neve Campbell, and she did get a lot of it. And then to recover from that and come back and do an outstanding job, not that she didn't do a bad job when she first came in, but when she recovered from what was going on in her personal life, to come back and take what she had was going on and just throw it into that role, and people really warm up to her, and only to get hit over the head with this because you said nothing wrong, is really messed up. Now, if that can happen to her as an actress, imagine what that can be for anybody else on a lower level playing field as far as a regular job. That was really my point of making this video, not necessarily because of what happened to her and being fired from her job and her role in this franchise, but the fact that if this could happen to someone like her, what does that mean for, like, say, any of us? Like I said, you have to practically walk on eggshells when it comes to talking about certain topics. And what is the phrasing? you know who has power when you can't talk about them or something like that. I'm just paraphrasing, but something along those lines. But that just shows you right there how everything just kind of plays itself out. And again, actress making I'm certain a good amount of money doing the role that she did, literally gets cut in one fell swoop. Now I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they going to issue her an apology. They may or may not do it, but I'm gonna tell you this right now, based on what I've seen online from Scream fans, a lot of them are saying they are boycotting Scream 7 until further notice. So I don't know what is going to come of that. They better work a miracle somehow, some way. Their best bet is to issue Melissa an apology and see if they could bring her back on while this is still fresh. And they might have to throw a couple more ducats into her account to make her come back. And see if they can find a way to pencil a hole in the schedule of Jenna Ortega, quote unquote, and see if they could bring her back. Because it's one thing that you lost one star, but not even lost, that you fired one star, but then you lost another. Now you got to work double time to see if you can even get them back to consider even wanting to come back. And that's going to be a stretch. So we'll see what happens. But right now, if they can't bring them back, I don't know how successful they expect this 7th one to be, because I don't think Neve Campbell's going to come back. And I would have loved to have it where it was all of them together and they just wrap up the series that way and finish out Sydney's arc and just end the series as a whole right there. Now that doesn't look like that's going to happen. But like I said, if this can happen to an actress or anybody who is a prominence, people like us really don't stand a chance when it comes to talking about you know who. And this also shows you right here that even if you talk about certain things from one aspect of it, you're not going to satisfy anybody. If you talk about it from another aspect, you're still not going to satisfy anybody. That is exactly why myself as a black man, and surely a lot of the black people that watch me, we tell people we don't ask us our opinion about what's going on over there, because if we say one thing, we're wrong. If we say something else, we're still wrong. It's a double-edged sword where there are no winners when it comes to that particular topic. And it doesn't even have to necessarily just be this, but since this is the topic of discussion, we're leaving it pretty much right there. And like I said, there are no winners here when it comes to this particular situation, as far as if you say something against something else, even though you know it's the truth, you're still going to lose at the end of the day, because they're the ones holding all of the cards. And again, them firing her exactly proved her point. I don't know if they realize it yet or not, but her point literally got proven by them straight up firing her. And I'll take it a step further, and this is something I probably should have mentioned earlier when I was talking about what they should do in the situation. If I was her, if I could, I would get my attorneys and see if there's a way that I could sue them for anything. Just find something to sue them over, because I'm sure there has to be some kind of a lawsuit there somehow, some way. If not, keep digging until you find one. And one last thing, I keep feeling like I'm ending this video when it seems like more and more stuff keeps coming to mind, but I swear this is probably the last thing I'm going to add. Let's not forget about Ezra Miller, who had that train wreck of a Flash movie come out back in June, was able to stay on board after getting into multiple physical altercations with people, including women, over the last couple of years, and was not fired from the role, even though many people yelled and demanded that he be removed from that role and replaced with the actor Grant Gustin, who played the Flash on the CW series. But we all know why Ezra Miller was not removed. I told y'all he has the Trinity. I think by now, as long as y'all have been watching me, know exactly what that Trinity is. And one of them is the one that you can't really speak ill about, or critique, I should say.